الهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إقرارا به وتوحيدا وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما مزيدا. أما بعد، احذروا من شياطين الإنس.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Be cautious of the shayateen amongst the humans.
يعني هذا يدرس الآن هنا.
So this one he's studying right now.
درسنا ولله الحمد كتاب التوحيد.
And we studied walhamdulillah kitab al-Tawheed.
نعم، دراسة مختصرة.
Even though it was a concise explanation, but there's no problem.
أول مرة يدرس فيها، ما يمكن يدرس دراسة مطولة.
The first time a person studies kitab al-Tawheed, it cannot be a detailed explanation.
كذلك فقه دراسة مختصرة، ما الإشكال؟
And similarly, when it comes to fiqh, there's no problem in studying fiqh firstly summarized.
يأتي شيطان من الشياطين وقال إيش تستفيد من هذه الدراسة؟
And a shaitan comes to a person and says, what do you benefit from studying fiqh like this?
نحن لا نحتاج هذا الفقه.
We don't require this fiqh.
نحن كذا، كلمة واحدة. أو يقول ابن سعدي الله يرحمه، الله يرحمه، مات.
Or a person says regarding a Shaykh Sa'di, he's died, may Allah have mercy upon him.
فأنت لا تستطيع تقرأ بعد هذا الكتاب، صح ولا؟ إذن أخواننا في شياطين الذي لا يدرس يريدك أنت لا تدرس.
So there are some shayateen amongst the humans, they themselves do not study and neither do they desire for you to study.
أو قال نذهب نشرب كوفي.
Let's go drink coffee.
والدرس قال مسجل، ما في مشكلة.
As for the lesson, it's recorded, don't worry about the lesson.
صحيح؟ لا يا أخي، هذه أيام، يومين ثلاثة، بعضكم قال نريد الدرس وكذا، وعندما بدأنا الدرس وبدأنا الدورة يعني هذا مشكلة، صح؟
So this dawrah, it's only for 2 or 3 days, and many of you wanted the lessons, you wanted the sheikh to visit, and now that the lesson begins, then problems.
نعم. أنتم تظنوا بن عثيمين كان يلعب رحمه الله؟
Do you think that a Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah he used to play?
تظن؟ والله أكمل كتاب مع ابن سعدي، هو وحده أكمل كتاب. فابن سعدي فرح بابن عثيمين، أعطاه جائزة مو 50 باوند، لا، أعطاه تفاحة. في القصيم لا يعرف التفاح.
Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he completed the study of a whole book with his Shaykh Sa'di. And when he completed the whole book with him alone, studying the book, Shaykh Sa'di he became happy. And so he gave him a gift. And he didn't give him £50, rather he gave him an apple. Because an apple in Qasim in those days was rare.
شيء غالي.
And it was something expensive and precious.
أخذ الشيخ بن عثيمين التفاحة وذهب إلى البيت.
So Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he took this apple and he went to his house.
ينظر إليه ما يعرف.
And he's looking at the apple and he doesn't know what to do with the apple.
تطبخ تؤكل ما يعرف.
Is it consumed or is it cooked? He does not know.
رجع لابن سعدي قال هذه كيف؟
So he came back to a Shaykh Sa'di and he said, look, this what do I do with this?
نعم. ما يعرف اللعب بن عثيمين رحمه الله.
Because Ibn Uthaymeen, he did not know playing.
وانت تظن بن عثيمين ما جاءوا الشياطين وقالوا له اترك درس بن سعدي؟
And do you think that the shayateen amongst the humans did not come to a Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen and try to doubt him? Place doubts regarding the books of a Shaykh Sa'di?
أخذنا الوضوء والاغتسال والتيمم.
We studied al-wudu and al-ghusl and al-tayammum.
الماء ينقسم إلى قسمين، طهور ونجس فقط.
And then there are 2 types of water, either it is pure or impure.
الماء الذي باقي على خلقته، باقي على أصله، نزل من السماء ماء المطر أو مياه الآبار، العيون، الأنهار، نعم، هذا طهور.
The water which is pure is that water which remains in its original natural state. Whether it is water which descends from the skies as rain, or water from springs and fountains, or water in rivers, any water which is in its natural state, this is pure.
فلا يمكن أننا نحكم عليه بالنجاسة إلا إذا تغير.
And therefore, we cannot consider it to be impure unless that water changes.
تغير إما بالرائحة
Either its smell changes
أو باللون
or its color changes
أو بالذوق، لكن يتغير بنجاسة، لكن تغير نزل فيه ورق ما في إشكال، ورق شجر.
or its taste changes. And we consider it to be impure when any one of these three qualities change due to an impurity. As for one of these qualities changing with something which is pure, like for example,
نزل فيه ورق الشجر.
Now, for example, if leaves of a tree fell into the water, this does not make it najas.
لا إشكال. طيب اختلفنا أنا والشيخ أبو العباس فيما عندنا. أنا أقول طهور وهو يقول نجس. الحق مع من؟
So if me and Abu Abbas, if we differed regarding the state of this water, I say that it is impure, I say that it is pure, and he says that it is impure. Who is right?
معي لابد. نعم.
The Shaykh is right always.
لماذا؟
Why?
لأن هذا الأصل.
Because
هذا يدعي خلاف الأصل هو الذي يطالب بالدليل، يقول تغير لون أو طعم أو ريح، وإلا الأصل الطهارة.
Because the asal, the base default ruling with regards to water is purity, and therefore the one who says that it is impure, he is demanded to bring proof.
نعم. طيب أيضا عندنا السواك.
And also we have the siwak.
السواك هو التسوك بعود الأراك أو أي عود لا يضر ولا يتفتت. نعم، لا يتفتت في الفم، ما في فائدة إذا تفتت في الفم. نعم.
And siwak is the stick which is from the root of the tree or the plant or any other type of matter or any other thing by which a person is able to clean his mouth and it does not damage his mouth.
نعم. يستحب السواك، بل السواك سنة مؤكدة في كل وقت.
And neither does the siwak break by merely brushing the teeth. This is called a siwak.
نعم. سنة مؤكدة، بل عندنا حديث أن السواك مرضاة للرب.
And using a siwak is an emphasized sunnah. In fact, it is so emphasized that we have with us a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that using the siwak pleases Allah.
السواك يستحب في كل وقت.
And so using the siwak, i.e. brushing the teeth, it is recommended and encouraged in every time.
للصائم وغير الصائم.
Whether a person is fasting or not.
عند الوضوء.
When making wudu.
عند الصلاة.
Before salah.
عند قراءة القرآن.
Before reciting Quran.
قيام الليل.
Before qiyam al-layl.
دخول المنزل.
When a person enters the house.
تغير رائحة الفم.
In order to change the odor which is emanating from the mouth.
عند الموت.
And also before death.
كيف عند الموت؟
How before death?
النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قبل الموت استاك.
Because the Prophet ﷺ, before he passed away, he used the miswak, he brushed his teeth.
هذا الدين الإسلامي دين يحث على النظافة، على الطهارة، على الآداب، على الأخلاق. لا يوجد مثل هذا الدين.
And this shows and indicates that this religion of Islam, it encourages us with hygiene and cleanliness and good etiquettes and good practices. And therefore there is no religion like the religion of Islam.
ومن الآداب آداب قضاء الحاجة.
And also from the etiquettes or the good practices of Islam is that which pertains to answering the call of nature.
يجب أن يستتر عن أعين الناس حال قضاء الحاجة وجوبا.
Firstly, it is an obligation for a person when urinating that he is far removed and concealed from the sight of the people.
يغلق الباب مثلا.
For example, closing the door.
وإذا كان في الفضاء شجرة، سيارة، جدار أو يبعد. نعم.
Or if he is in an open space, hiding behind a tree or a stone or being far away from the people.
لا يدخل إلى الحمام بشيء فيه ذكر الله، المصاحف، القرآن، كتب العلم.
And from the etiquettes is that a person does not enter into the lavatories with anything which contains the name of Allah like the Quran or the Mus'haf.
ينقطع عن ذكر الله وجوبا.
Also, when a person enters into that place, then he is obligated to stop mentioning the name of Allah.
ولا يتكلم بكلام الناس.
And neither does he converse or have any normal speech.
قبل أن يدخل يقول بسم الله اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الخبث والخبائث بالتسكين. نعم أفضل.
And also, before a person enters into the toilets, he says in the name of Allah, and then he says Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubthi wal khaba'ith.
نعم. وإذا خرج إذا دخل يقدم الرجل اليسرى وإذا خرج يقدم الرجل اليمنى وقل غفرانك بعد أن يخرج. نعم.
And when he enters the toilet, he enters with his left foot, and when he exits from the toilet, he exits with his right foot. And after he has exited, he seeks forgiveness by saying غفرانك.
لا يستقبل القبلة ولا يستدبرها.
And also, when urinating or answering the call of nature, neither does he face the Qibla with his front, nor does he give his back to the Qibla.
لا يقضي الحاجة في أماكن يؤذي الناس فيه الناس ولو كانوا كفارا ولو كانوا أهل بدع.
And from the etiquettes of answering the call of nature, that he does not do so in any place or path which would harm others, whether they are non-Muslims or the people of innovation.
لا يبول في الماء الدائم الراكد.
Also, a person is not permitted to urinate in still standing water.
لا يمس ذكره بيمينه.
And he does not touch his private parts with his right hand.
له أن يبول قائما بشرطين.
And he is permitted to urinate standing up, but with two conditions.
أن يأمن أن الرشاش لا يرتد عليه رشاش البول.
That firstly, the droplets of urine do not splash back onto him or his clothing.
الثاني أن يأمن أن العورة لا تنكشف.
And also that his aura or his private parts are not exposed in front of others.
نعم. إذا انتهى من قضاء الحاجة.
So when a person has finished answering the call of nature,
لابد أن يطهر المكان بالماء أو بالحجارة المناديل الأخشاب الخرق.
and then after this a person has to cleanse that place from which the impurity was discharged. And this is done either through water or stones, handkerchiefs, leaves or tissue.
التطهير بالماء واضح.
As for cleansing and purifying using water, this is clear.
التطهير بالمناديل يشترط فيها شروط أن تكون طاهرة لا نجسة.
As for cleansing oneself using tissue, papers or handkerchiefs, there are certain conditions. The first condition is that this itself has to be pure.
نعم. وألا تكون محترمة ما يمكن يعني بأوراق الكتب أو المصاحف. نعم.
And also the paper which you are using to cleanse yourself, it cannot be something which is respectable, meaning it cannot be a book or knowledge or mushaf. نعوذ بالله.
ولا تكون طعام للإنس ولا للجن ولا طعام لدواب الإنس ولا طعام لدواب الجن.
And neither is a person permitted to use anything which is food of humans or beings or the animals of humans and jinn.
نعم. تمام. ولا بد أن تكون 3 مناديل أقل شيء إلا إذا كان المنديل كبير مثلا له أن يمسح هنا مرة أو حجر كبير لكن يمسح هنا مرة واحدة أصبح هذا المنديل نجس لا بد يغيره. نعم.
And a person has to wipe himself 3 times. Either he uses 3 separate pieces of tissue, or if it's a long piece of paper or handkerchief, then he can use different parts 3 times. As for when a person cleanses himself once, then that part it has now become najas. And same with a stone.
إذا رجع المنديل جافا ليس في أثر بول ولا غائط يعني حصلت النظافة حصل النقاء الحمد لله. إذا رجع فيه أثر لابد يعيد أقل شيء 3 مسحات ثم يزيد حتى ينقطع. نعم.
So the minimum amount of wipes that a person must wipe his private parts with is 3. And if on this 3rd time the paper is dry, meaning there's no najasa and there's no wetness, then a person can stop. The person has considered or considers his private parts to be clean. However, if after the 3rd time there's still some wetness of urine or there's some najasa from one's feces, then he continues until the paper or the handkerchief is dry.
نعم. إذا انقطع على مثلا 6 مسحات 6 حجارة 6 مناديل يستحب له أن يزيد حتى ينقطع على عدد زوجي فردي لا زوجي. نعم.
And if a person has finished wiping himself, for example, with 6 wipes or 6 stones or 6 handkerchiefs, then it's recommended for a person to stop on an odd number, not on an even number. So he does it one more time.
لا يوسوس. لا يوسوس. نعم.
And also a person should not be affected by paranoia.
نعم. الحيض والنفاس.
اشرح يوسوس.
نعم.
اشرح شو يوسوس. اشرح. أو مثل.
يوسوس يعني وسوسة من الشيطان. يعني الشيطان يقول له ما حصل الطهارة. بعض الناس يبقى في الحمام أحيانا ساعة يقفز. نعم.
A person, after having purified himself, should not be affected by paranoia. Some people, they'll remain in the toilet cleansing themselves for a whole hour, and this is all paranoia from shaitan.
يستعمل 100 منديل.
A person might have wiped himself with 100 different tissues,
ماء
tissue paper,
كثير.
a lot of water.
يلف حول المسجد. نعم يلف يدور حول المسجد لأنه يعتقد أنه بعد خروجه من الحمام ينزل شيء لكن بعد ربع ساعة.
And then after 15 minutes he might return back to the masjid, and then after another 15 minutes he returns back to the masjid because he believes every time he has left that area and cleansed himself he is impure.
يظن أنه به سلس بول وهو ما فيه إلا العافية.
And he thinks that he is ill because of droplets of urine, and there's nothing wrong with him.
مفهوم؟ أنت اصنع اللي أمرك الله.
So you have to do that which Allah commanded you to do.
يا أخي اخرج صلي.
After you have purified yourself, come and pray.
ما حد قال لك تقفز في الحمام أو تلف.
Nobody said that you have to jump in the toilets or go around the masjid.
يقول أنا متيقن 100% أنه تنزل نقطة بول وهو يظن أنه هذا هو سلس البول. هذا ليس بسلس بول. نعم.
So if a person says that I am certain 100% that a droplet of urine was discharged, this is not that illness in which there is a continuous discharge of urine.
هذا ممكن أثر الغسل بالماء.
This sometimes is an effect of washing with water.
يا أخي لا توسوس.
So don't be affected by paranoia.
شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله يقول يعفى عن يسير النجاسات.
Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said that tiny amounts of nijasa are overlooked, forgiven.
نعم. اترك الوسواس من الشيطان.
And in any case, this paranoia, it is from shaitan.
الحيض.
And then after this we come to hayd, which are the menses.
أعلم الناس بهذا الباب النساء. نعم.
And hayd, menses, i.e. the periodic bleeding of women, the most knowing of people regarding this are the women.
المرأة أي مرأة تسأل مثلا عن الحيض ماذا نقول لها؟ نعم.
If a woman asks or questions regarding hayd, how do we answer?
نقول لها هل لك أيام معلومة دائما تأتي مثل 6 أيام و7 أيام؟ إذا قالت نعم نقول تمام، تبقي هذه 6 أيام أو 7 أيام وبعد هذا لو نزل دم هذا استحاضة. نعم.
So if a woman asks about her bleeding, you say to her, do you know of your regular periods? Meaning, do you have regular periods in which you bleed? For example, 5 or 6 days at a particular time. So if she says, yes, I know it, then we say, okay, for these 5 or 6 days, you consider yourself to be in a state of hayd, of menses, and then anything in addition to this, it is continuous bleeding.
تمام.
استحاضة.
أي مرأة تأتينا نسألها عندك أيام معلومة؟ إذا قالت نعم نقول أنت في الشرع لها اسم وهي معتادة، يعني لها عادة معلومة تبقى هذه العادة وما زاد عنها فهو استحاضة. تمام.
So any woman who comes and she is unsure about the rulings of al-hayd, you answer her, do you know when you have your regular periods? And if it is known, like those 6 days for example, then according to the sharia, for that known time, she is considered to be impure due to her menses. And anything which is in addition to this, then this is istihada, this is regular bleeding. And that woman who knows of a period of her hayd, then she is known as mu'tada, meaning a woman whose bleeding is regular.
جاءتنا مرأة.
A woman came.
عندك عادة معلومة؟ قالت لا.
And she asked you, and you replied that, do you know the days of your bleeding? She said no.
دم طيلة الشهر.
Sometimes for the whole month there is bleeding.
نقول طيب، هل أنت مميزة تميزي تفرقي بين دم الحيض ودم العادي الجرح مثلا؟
Then she is asked that, are you able to recognize and differentiate and distinguish between the blood of the menses and normal bleeding? Like for example, if there is a cut and there is blood, are you able to distinguish between the two types of blood?
تقول نعم أنا أفرق.
And if she says yes, I can distinguish between both.
نقول تمام. الذي تحكم عليه بالتفريق أنه حيض حيض، والثاني هذا استحاضة وخلاص. تبقي في الحيض وفي الاستحاضة تصلي، سيأتي معنا كيف نصنع. نعم.
And so then the answer is that as long as you are able to distinguish between the different types of blood, then that blood which you consider to be hayd, for those days you are in a state of impurity. And as for the other days in which the bleeding and the blood is not the blood of the menses, through that which you can recognize, then this is normal bleeding, and we will come to the rulings of al-istihada, that she can pray in this time.
تمام. جاءتنا مرأة ثالثة.
And then هذه مميزة.
هذه الثانية مميزة. نعم.
And this woman, she's called mumayyiza, meaning a woman who can distinguish between the two types of blood. And then a third woman approaches.
الثالثة جاءت، هل لك عادة معلومة؟ قالت لا.
And she questions regarding her menses, and you say to her, do you know your regular period of bleeding? She says no.
في تفرقي؟ قالت لا.
Are you able to distinguish between the bleeding of the menses and the blood which is normal? She says no.
هذه اسمها متحيرة، هي حائرة في نفسها وحيرتنا نحن معها. نعم.
And the terminology which is given to her by the Sharia is that she is mutahayyira, meaning she's in a state of confusion. She herself is in a state of confusion, and we are confused along with her.
ماذا تصنع؟
So what does she do?
تبحث عن أختها، عن أمها، عن خالتها، بنت خالتها، وتنظر كم الأيام عندهم. 7 أيام، إذن هي تبقى 7 أيام مثلهم في الحيض والباقي استحاضة. نعم.
She looks at her mother or her sisters or her niece, for example, and she follows them. So if one of them or some of them, if they bleeding is, for example, for 5 or 6 days, then she considers these days of bleeding to be hayd, menses, and impurity, and the remaining days she is in istihada.
من عليه حدث أصغر يحرم عليه ماذا؟ من عليه حدث أصغر يعني خرج منه ريح ولم يتوضأ، هذا يحرم عليه أن يصلي.
A person who is in a state of minor impurity, which things are forbidden for that person? So firstly, for example, a person who has passed wind, which things are forbidden for that person? He cannot pray, he or she cannot pray.
لا يصلي ولا يطوف.
Neither are they allowed to perform tawaf around the Kaaba.
ولا يمس المصحف.
And neither are they allowed to touch the mushaf.
تمام. ومن عليه حدث أكبر.
As for the one who is in a state of major impurity,
لا يصلي ولا يطوف ولا يمس المصحف.
then he or she is not permitted to perform these previous 3, meaning no salah and no tawaf, and neither touching the mushaf,
ولا يقرأ القرآن,
and neither the recitation of the Quran,
ولا يبقى في المسجد بغير وضوء,
and neither is that person permitted to remain in the masjid without performing wudu.
الحائض والنفساء تأخذ هذا كله، لا تصلي ولا تصوم ولا تطوف. نعم.
And as for the women who are in a state of impurity due to their menses or due to postnatal bleeding, then all of these matters, meaning she does not pray salah, neither does she make tawaf, nor does she touch the mushaf,
ولا تدخل المسجد,
neither does she enter and remain in the masjid,
ولا تصوم,
neither does she fast,
ولا تطلق,
nor is she divorced,
ولا توطأ,
neither are intimate relations permitted with her,
ولها أن تقرأ القرآن.
but she's permitted to recite the Quran.
لكن لا تمس المصحف، ممكن تأخذ قرقة أو شيء وتقلب المصحف.
But that is without directly touching the mushaf. But it's permitted for her to take a cloth or a stick and she can turn the pages.
هذا يقول الشيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله أنه ما يمنعها شيء من قراءة القرآن، الحائض تقرأ القرآن. نعم.
And this is the view of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, that a woman in a state of major impurity due to haid or nifas, postnatal bleeding, is not prevented from reciting the Quran.
المسح على الخفين على الجوربين.
As for wiping over leather socks or fabric socks, fabric footwear,
الأول لابد أن يلبس الخفين الجوربين على وضوء كامل، يكون غسل حتى الرجلين بالماء.
the first condition which permits this is that a person has to have worn that footwear after making a complete wudu, including the washing of the feet.
أن تكون الجوربين طاهرة لا نجسة.
And then the fabric socks have to be pure and not impure.
أن تكون ساترة لأكثر العضو. يعني في عندنا الجوارب هذه القصيرة ينكشف منها الكعب، يقول الشيخ بن عثيمين رحمه الله أنه يمسح على أنه ساتر غالب العضو. نعم.
And then thirdly, that the footwear you are wearing has to cover the majority of your foot. So for example, those socks which don't reach to the ankles, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah, his view was that you can make masah over them.
أن يكون المسح في الحدث الأصغر للأكبر.
And you can make masah over them because they are still covering the majority of the foot. The next condition of al-masah al-khuffain is that it is done due to minor impurity but not major impurity.
أن يكون المسح في الوقت يوم وليلة للمقيم، 24 ساعة للمقيم، 72 ساعة للمسافر.
And it has to be done, or al-masah al-khuffain has to be done within the legislated period of time, meaning for the one who is resident 24 hours, i.e. the passing of a night and a day, and the one who is traveling 72 hours, meaning the passing of 3 nights and 3 days.
نعم. طيب. المسح على الجبيرة. الجبيرة يعني يضعها على يده إذا كان في عنده كسر. الله يعافينا وإياكم. نعم.
And then wiping over casts. So the cast is that which is placed over a bone which has been broken. May Allah save us and you.
نعم. الآن مثلا إنسان على يده جبيرة.
So if a person is wearing a cast
أراد يتوضأ
and then intends to perform wudu,
نقول لابد تزيل هذه وتتوضأ، تغسل يديك لابد.
do you say to that person that without doubt you have to remove your cast and you have to wash the body part?
قال لا أستطيع.
And the person says, I'm not able to do so.
نقول تمام، امسح عليها.
Then we say to the person, you are permitted to wipe over the cast.
تمام. قال أستطيع، امسح.
So if he is able to wipe over, then he wipes over.
عندنا إنسان مجروح، جرح مكشوف.
Another person has an open cut or an open wound.
لابد تغسل في الوضوء.
He has to wash when performing wudu.
قال لا أستطيع.
If he says, I'm not able to do so,
نقول امسح.
then we say wipe over it.
قال نقطة ماء تضر الجرح، نقطة واحدة تضر، ما أستطيع.
And if he's not able to wipe over, meaning with wet hands, because even a droplet of water will injure him,
لا أستطيع أضع يدي على الجرح.
says, I'm not even able to place my hand over the open wound.
ماذا يصنع؟
What does he do?
يتوضأ وضوء كامل دون اليد.
He performs a full wudu but without washing the arm.
إذا انتهى من الوضوء.
And once he has finished from the wudu,
ينوي بقلبه.
and then he makes intention in his heart.
بسم الله.
He verbalizes the name of Allah upon his
ضربة
tongue.
واحدة على الأرض.
And then he places his hands once upon the earth.
يمسح الوجه.
Wipes over his face.
ظاهر اليمنى.
And then the back of his right
ظاهر
hand.
اليسرى.
And then the back of his left hand.
هذا التيمم عن هذا.
So this tayammum is in place of him not even wiping over the arm.
نعم. طيب. عندنا أيضا المرأة تمسح على الخمار، يعني تعرف أنت تأتي الآن خاصة أيام البرد وكذا إلى المسجد تمسح على خماره. نعم. مسح.
And also it is permitted for a woman to wipe over her headscarf, because you know, especially in this time, for example in the winter, it's difficult for her to remove her headscarf, so she can wipe over her headscarf.
نعم. هنا يذكر الفقهاء الآنية الأواني. لماذا؟ لأن الماء جوهر سيال يحتاج إلى أواني، فيصح أن يستعمل كل الأواني الأصل فيها الطهارة حتى لو جاءت من الصين أو من كذا. نعم.
And then here the ulama, they speak about the rulings of using utensils. And why do they speak about utensils in the chapter of purification? Because water, it's a liquid. And therefore a liquid, it requires a container. And these containers are the utensils. So the asal, the base default ruling when it comes to utensils is that they are pure. Even if they come from China or from غير المسلمين.
نعم.
If they are the utensils of the non-Muslims, then the asal is that they are pure.
إلا آنية الذهب والفضة ما يستخدمها.
Except utensils which have been manufactured from gold or silver, they are not permitted to be used.
ما حكم آنية الكفار؟ هل هي طاهرة أو نجسة؟
So what is the ruling of using utensils from the kuffar? Are they tahir, pure or impure?
3 أقسام.
3 types.
أن نعلم طهارتها فهي طاهرة.
Firstly, if we know that they are pure, then they are pure.
أن نعلم نجاستها فهي نجسة لابد تغسل. مثلا وضعوا فيها خنزير.
If we know that those utensils are impure because they have been utilized for something which is impure, like for example a container of khinzir, of swine, then they are washed.
نعم.
And then they are pure.
تمام. نشك لا ندري.
And then the third situation is that we are in doubt. We don't know whether they are pure or impure.
الأصل إيش؟
Then we go back to the base default ruling.
الطهارة.
And that is that they are pure.
تمام. إزالة النجاسة.
And then after this, the removal of physical impurities.
إزالة النجاسة على 3 أقسام. كيف نزيل النجاسة؟
So there are 3 ways of purifying and removing a physical impurity.
الكلب أكرمكم الله إذا ولغ يعني شرب ما يشرب إلا بإخراج اللسان، فإذا ولغ في الإناء لابد إراقة جميع ما في الإناء، والمرة الأولى بالتراب، ثم الثانية والثالثة والرابعة والخامسة والسادسة والسابعة ماء. تضع ماء وتريق ماء حتى الكل 7. نعم.
So firstly, if the najasa, if the physical impurity is from a dog, akramakumullah, such that the dog licks or drinks from the utensil, and a dog only drinks from the utensil by using his tongue and the saliva of the dog, then how does purification occur? Firstly, you have to spill everything which was contained in the utensil.
نعم.
And then secondly, you have to clean it with soil. And then after cleansing it with soil, then then it is washed 7 times with water.
الثاني.
The second type of najasa.
المذي ما هو؟
المذي. And what is المذي?
سائل ليس له لون مثل الماء.
So المذي is a discharge, liquid which has no color, it's transparent like water.
يخرج عند التفكير عند التقبيل. نعم.
And this madhi, it is discharged due to a thought based upon desires or an action based upon desires.
ناقض للوضوء.
And like kissing, and this invalidates a person's wudu.
لابد أن يغسل الذكر والبيضتين خصوتين حتى ينقطع الخروج. نعم.
And a person has to wash his frontal private part and the testicles, so we are sure that it is clean.
نزل على الثوب.
If madhi, it soils a person's clothing.
ماذا أصنع؟
What do I do?
تأخذ ماء.
You take water.
ترش هكذا.
And you spray or sprinkle on the cloth.
خلاص. وتخرج تصلي.
And this is sufficient.
ليس في نجاسة الآن.
And there is no najasa.
سهل. تطهيره سهل. مفهوم؟
So it invalidates a person's wudu. So you have to repeat wudu and you have to wash your private part and the area around that. But when it comes to the thobe, you sprinkle water on it.
رش فقط.
Just sprinkling.
طيب. هذا الأستاذ دخل الآن لدورة المياه.
So this person, this teacher, he entered into the lavatories.
في دورة المياه جاءت نقطة من البول على ثوبه.
And whilst he was there, a droplet of urine, it soiled his clothes.
ماذا يصنع؟
What does he do?
يأخذ هكذا.
He takes the clothing.
يرش ماء.
He takes the piece of cloth where there is the droplet of urine and he sprinkles water on it.
ويعصر.
and then he squeezes it out.
خلاص طهارة لللباس.
And now it is pure.
ما يحتاج يذهب إلى البيت ويغسل. دين يسر.
He doesn't need to go to his house and take off his thobe and change it and wash it. Why? Because the religion is easy.
إذن ثلاثة أقسام.
So there are three ways of purifying from impurities.
نجاسة الكلب 7 مرات ولهن بالتراب.
Firstly, the impurity of a dog, and this is 7 times, the first with soil.
المذي رش.
And then after this, al-madhi, which is that discharge based upon desires, and this is sprinkling over it.
بقية النجاسات رش مع عصر.
And then the other remaining physical impurities by sprinkling water over it and then squeezing the water out.
الساعة كم نوقف؟
الساعة 7 يا شيخ.
طيب. نعم خلاص نوقف.
هي دقيقتين.
دقيقتين الحمد لله. نعم. طيب. إذن أخذنا كتاب الطهارة ولله الحمد.
So alhamdulillah, we have studied كتاب الطهارة.
قلنا لابد من طهارة باطن وطهارة ظاهر.
And we mentioned that a person begins with the purification of his inner self.
ظاهر حدث وخبث.
And then
نجاسة.
And then after this, his out self. And as for the tahara, which is apparent and physical, this is the tahara from al-hadath and physical impurities.
حدث أكبر حدث أصغر.
And we said that the states of hadath or the states of impurity are major and minor.
طهارة من النجاسات بدن بقعة وثوب.
And as for purifying yourself from the physical impurities, and this is your clothing and your body and the area which you are worshipping Allah in.
على الثوب رش مع عصر.
As for your clothing, then sprinkling water over it and then squeezing the water out.
إلا المذي رش.
Apart from al-madhi, it only requires sprinkling.
الإناء ولغ في الكلب 7 مرات ولهن بالتراب.
As for utensils, then 7 times of cleansing, the first of which is with soil.
أخذنا الحيض.
We also studied al-hayd.
ومثل النفاس.
And similar to this is postnatal bleeding.
أما المستحاضة تصلي تغتسل وتصلي. نعم.
As for al-istihadha, which is continuous bleeding after the bleeding of the menses, then a woman prays.
المني ليس بنجس.
And as for semen, it is not impure.
لماذا؟
Why?
أصل خلقة الإنسان.
Because semen is the substance from which human was created.
وكان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا كان على ثوبه إذا كان رطب يرش بالماء جاف يحته. نعم.
And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if his clothing was soiled with semen, if it was still wet, then he would sprinkle water over it.
نعم.
And if it had become dry, then he would scrub it off.
تراجع لنا من كتاب منهج السالكين كتاب الطهارة، وإن شاء الله تعالى بعد صلاة المغرب نأخذ كتاب نراجع ونأخذ كتاب الصلاة. والله أعلم، وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى صحبه وسلم، وجزاكم الله خيرا.